Look here for a beginner's guide to finding, reading and understanding case law. And for more videos like this, don't forget to like and subscribe.
Hello, John Dove here, criminal barrister and founder of Speed Mooting. As you may or may not know, case law comes from cases that are decided by the higher courts in England and Wales. So these would be judgments from the High Court, the Court of Appeal and the Supreme Court. Now, case law is binding in this country as we have a common law system. And what these cases do is they create binding precedents. So in effect, these cases create law. It's absolutely crucial for you to be able to read cases and understand them properly. You need to be able to understand the principles because, of course, it will come up during your degree or your studies. So if you're asked questions, whether they're problem questions or whether they are analytical questions, you'll need to be able to understand and apply the law. Of course, if you take part in mooting, in addition to your advocacy, you're being tested on how well you can apply the law. So how well you read those cases and, of course, put those into practice in your submissions. So for those reasons, understanding case law is crucial. So firstly, where do we find case law? So many of you, if you're still in education, should have access to legal databases. Some of the more common or popular ones are, for example, Westlaw and LexisNexis. So in effect, these are large databases and that's where these cases can be found. There are also free websites, for example, Bailey, which also contain case law. So if you know the case that you're looking for, well, of course, you can simply type in the case name or the citation, which is attached to the case, and you should be able to find it on the relevant database. Alternatively, if you're doing general legal research and you're trying to research a specific point, no doubt you'll use the keyword features, the search feature, and you'll search for certain key terms, and that should put you in the right direction towards case law. So let's say you want to read a specific judgment. So let's say you've gone through the textbook and you're reading through a particular area of the law and there's a particular judgment in there which the textbook says is quite important and you decide you want to read that. Well, you can then go onto the legal databases, search for the case and then read it. But you need to ensure that you read the right case. Particularly if this is a case that involves names that are quite common. So for example, let's say the case is Smith against Jones. If you search for that, no doubt that's going to bring up tens or hundreds of cases. So look at the citation and ensure that you are reading the right case. Make sure the citation for the case you are reading matches up to the case that you've looked at in the textbook. And you need to be careful to ensure that you're reading the right judgments because sometimes there might be multiple cases involving the same parties. For example, if it's been through the Court of Appeal and then the Supreme Court. So ensure that you are reading the correct judgment. Now, when you find a case online, firstly, you will find a case summary and that will summarize who the parties were, what the issues were, and ultimately what the judgment was. And it's very helpful because, it gives you a general flavour for the case. And particularly if you're doing general research, you click on that, you'll know whether you're going in the right direction. But if you're going to be using a case, for example, in a moot, ensure you've read the full judgment and not just a case summary. Very tempting just to look at the summary, but there might be something in there that goes against your argument. So be careful and ensure that you're reading judgments in full if you're going to be relying upon them. Now, when a case is decided, the legal principle that's established or the reason for the decision is the ratio. So, of course, you need to be able to identify that when you read a case. In addition to this, you'll also find obiter dicta. Now, obiter dicta are comments made by judges that are not binding but can be persuasive. So, for example, it might be a judge saying, well, if the facts were slightly different, I would have decided in this particular way. So, of course, it's not binding in that particular case, but it can be persuasive. And, of course, that can be helpful for you, particularly if you're mooting and you're trying to distinguish quite a strong legal point. Or, of course, if you're dealing with a discussion question, for example, in your studies. So obiter dicta can be quite helpful as well, but you need to be able to distinguish between the ratio and any obiter dicta. So those are just a few comments from me in relation to how beginners can understand case law. I hope you found that helpful. This video is brought to you by Speed Mooting. We are an organisation that help aspiring and junior lawyers. We run online and in-person advocacy and mooting competitions. We do online advocacy and public speaking training, and we run lots of other events to assist people on their legal journey. To learn more, visit our website, speedmooting.com.